Hi everyone, my name is Macy. I'm a mom and also a parent coach I've been doing this for 27 years, for a while. But I want to continue with the topic of rethinking autism, understanding it in a different way. So I wanted to start by sharing with you what Temple Grandin once said, that she said the world needs different kinds of minds, which I think is very, very true. It's beautiful. I am doing an autism career pathway project. I'm developing a career-based, activity-based assessment for adults with autism. So I'm learning a lot, just talking to people, adults with autism, and I am now thinking about the definition of autism in a much different way. I think the world has changed. We live in the 21st century. The old way of raising children, hi everyone, the way our parents raised us, that's not going to work to raise the millennials. And you throw in a disability in there, a diagnosis in there, it's just not going to work. Different expectations, different obstacles. The pace of our lives are a lot quicker now. How do we keep up raising children in the 21st century and do the best that we can as parents when we have a kid diagnosed with autism, ADHD, or whatever else their diagnosis is, right? So that's what today's all about. The first thing we do when we work with parents, we work on the autism education, because I think it's important for parents to know what they're dealing with, right? The medical description of autism, how it's described as a neurological condition, a lifelong neurological condition, that's not gonna help us as parents. What does that mean exactly, right? No one tells us when they give our child a diagnosis that, hey, yes, your child has autism, but the brain is plastic. There are a lot of research supporting that our brain is an amazing organ. It depends, it continues to change depending on the experiences that we expose our brain to, right? So remember that our brain is plastic, and it really doesn't matter at what age. If we expose our brain the right way, it will continue to change. So keep that in mind. So therefore, there's no such a thing, I think, as the window. You know how we're told that if your child doesn't speak until the age of by the age of 5, then it's doomsday. That's not true, because our brain can change over the our lives. Okay, so let's rethink what we have heard about autism. Behaviors could be anything, excesses of behaviors, deficits of behaviors. That's how people like to describe our kids. Or your child doesn't use eye contact, your child doesn't know how to play, doesn't know how to communicate, and so on. Behaviors are expression of a brain that's a little bit different. So what our eyes could see, that's a way for our kids to cope and to express themselves, right? But what's actually important is what's going on underneath it, right? So what's going on underneath it? So these are the things that we see our kids struggle with. The first one is that the information processing disorder. When I speak to adults with autism, most of them would tell me it's very hard for them to process information coming to them at the same time. So if you're speaking to someone, trying to have a conversation, for a neurotypical, we can actually understand the person's facial expression, the person's intention, even though it's not verbally spoken. We can understand the way we look at us. We can understand the voice inflections. There's so much that we take for granted as neurotypicals, right? And for people with autism, it's hard enough for them to step up and participate in the conversation the best that they can, but they have to pick one. So they may just pick at looking at the partner and then they're gonna miss a lot of the gist of that conversation, right? So it's very hard for people with autism to keep up with the neurotypical pace. So keep that in mind. So an autistic brain just needs more time to process, to think. They have to process first in order for them to be able to think about what's going on and to give the appropriate output, right? And the output would be our neurotypical way of expecting them to respond in a certain way. So keep that in mind. It's not easy for them to be neurotypical, to use eye contact, to participate verbally in the conversation and so on, and also to have mind and body connection for them to be able to use gestures, for example, and voice inflection. So that's really, really tough. So keep that in mind, okay? But the positive side of having to slow down and really pay attention in the world, or when somebody is speaking to them, I think that people with autism, they're really, really good at reading people. They're really good readers of people in general. They have a good sense of people. I think they pay attention to our intentions. They're not able to verbally say that, but they know exactly what you're up to. So keep that in mind. Just because they don't have the output as expected, but they actually understand what's going on. They just don't have the same kind of output. Secondly, an autistic brain is very much hyper-focusing on certain sensory input or ideas or preferences. You know how they're very focused, hyper-focusing on certain things. It could be an object, it could be a topic, it could be an idea, and it's very hard for them to shift to the world and other people, right? So keep that in mind. But the positive side of this, I think, is that in the future, if we're nurturing these passion, there's a possibility that an obsession can turn into a passion, right? So I challenge all the parents to think about their child in a different light. So for example, my son loves spinning things. He just loves things that go round and round. He's always been like that. We get down on the floor and play with him. And so it turns into a little bit more back and forth, and he invites us to play with his spinning toys. And now it has changed a bit into stadiums. He's very interested into just different kinds of stadiums because they're shaped in a certain way, circular in a different way. So I have high hopes that someday in the future, that could be a passion and something that he can make a living very well doing it. So just because your kid does repetitive stuff, it doesn't mean that it's not useful. You just have to join them and explore, add variations, and hopefully you can help them turn it into a passion and something more productive. Okay, so hyper-focusing, yes, it's tough because it's tough to connect with them, but it could also be their superpower, okay? The next point is that your child's brain has to work extra hard to multi-process all of the sensory input coming to them. It's like chaos, especially when it's outside of the home, movie theater, restaurant. It's very loud. Visually, it's very, very distracting. It's very hard if you're not a neurotypical. So I noticed, for example, for my son, when he's, when he participates in baseball, which is a sport that he likes now because it's not super fast, and he has time to kind of regroup, and on the side, all the kids do that in between pitching, and so that's good because he has time to just he can check out and then come back in, right? In terms of social abilities, I think people with autism, they will be able to join a little bit, and then they need a break. They can do a little bit more, and then they need a break. So keep that in mind, So again, the pace might be different. That back and forth might look different, But remember, our expectations are neurotypical expectations. So it's very hard for people who have sensory issues, to have autism, and whatever. Their brain has to work extra hard. It's not natural for them, and therefore if they don't know how to do it well, if they fail a lot, then it's not motivating for them. Okay, so hi everyone, how is everyone doing? I'm so excited to see all of you. I'm trying to keep this short because I know you all want to move on to with your day. So multiprocessing is difficult. So whatever you have to practice it at home, because if you expect them to practice out and about, it's tough, right? It doesn't mean that they cannot do it. They just need more practice outside of the house, okay? Last point I want to talk about today, it's actually very important. I want to talk about static and dynamic. So specific to the autistic brain, it's their strength. They're born with the ability to overconnect to the static part of the brain. So static abilities are what? Can anybody name some static abilities? Things that are predictable, things that so static. So tell me some static abilities. Repetitions definitely is static. Yeah, wanting to say or do the same things, that's static. A lot of our kids are very good in math, or things that have to do with coding, because it's predictable. There's patterns, recurring patterns, so it could be a specific subject at school, or wanting to do things the same way. So in terms of how we use the static part of the brain, it's actually not much. We learn manners this way. We learn how to do certain things, sequence of things, like after we go to the bathroom. Yes, exactly. First this, then that. That's probably our fault, right? First you do this, then you do that. Wanting to get a reward. That's why any kind of screen-related activities, they love that. It's so addictive for them because it feeds into the static tendencies. But they're born with that. All these skills, reading can be static because my kid loves to read the same kind of books over and over again. They like to eat the same stuff over and over again. My kids like that. But actually in the real world, your static abilities, actually, we don't use it that much. We learn manners that way, self-care, how to do certain things, remembering how you need your key to be able to turn on the car and so on. But most of the time when we make decisions, when we connect with other people, when we make decisions, you guys, when we have our backup plan, relationships, pretty much things that are difficult for people with autism, social, emotion, understanding emotions and expressing emotions, back and forth communication, mindful decision making. We use our prefrontal cortex and using our dynamic thinking pathways, right? So that is true. The way we live in this world, we use our dynamic thinking pathways. Now, for people with autism, their brain is lacking the ability to use the dynamic thinking pathways. So it's underconnected to the dynamic thinking pathway, but it's overconnected to the static thinking pathways. But can they change? Yes, absolutely. That's all I want to talk about today. Actually, I would like to share this information to help you guys think about autism in a different way. Autism is, our kids are born with it. It's something that, yes, they have struggles, but I think it can also be their superpowers. So keep that in mind. We just have to participate and to help them to overcome and, to to be able to understand their certain expectations, and yet at the same time they can also be themselves, and it's okay to be themselves. Okay, so I think that's all I have. If you have any questions, let me know. Send me a message, and thank you so much. Yeah, somebody was saying about religion that you can learn, but yes, exactly, the belief in oneself or in the religion, that's very much dynamic thinking. Yes, definitely. Autism Dad saying, allow yourself to enter their world. Their world is amazing, you guys. I'm so blessed that I'm with adults with autism now. I talk to them all the time. I learn so much. Their world is unique, and it's fun and it's amazing, But sometimes because of our child's diagnosis, we overcompensate for that, and we see it as a disability. And don't let autism define your family, and you're definitely not your child. Okay, so it's thank you all for coming, and I'm going to stop now so I get to save the recording, and I'll upload it. Let's continue this conversation. I would love to hear your comments. And let's keep it going, the conversation, so we can learn with each other. Okay, bye. Have a great day, evening.